was a kid, one of my heroes was a guy named Bob Briggle, because he had a car that could do something nobody else's car could do. Damn it! You all right?
Jay Leno owns more than 180 cars. Ask a fan to name 5, and most people stall out after 3. That is not an accident. Somewhere inside that enormous collection, sitting between the McLarens and the Duesenbergs, are machines so strange and so easy to overlook that even longtime viewers of his show have driven past them in episode after episode without realizing what they were looking at. One of them is not even supposed to exist anymore. Most of its kind were destroyed on purpose, and it is not the rarest thing in the building. It sounds like a jet because it basically is one. Start the engine and it does not rumble. It whines, climbing from a low hum to a scream, the way a jet does on a runway before takeoff. That is the sound of Jay Leno's Chrysler turbine car warming up. Chrysler built 55 of these in the 1960s as a real-world experiment, handing them out to ordinary drivers across the country to see if a turbine engine could actually replace the piston engine in a production car. Most people loved them. Then Chrysler destroyed 46 of them anyway, partly to dodge steep import duties on the Italian-built bodies, partly because the technology never made financial sense to mass produce. Only 9 survived. Only 5 still run and drive today. Leno first laid eyes on one as a teenager at the 1964 World's Fair and watched it circle a display track again and again until he could not walk away. Decades later, he finally bought one of his own. The design came from Elwood Engel, with the bodies hand-built in Turin by the Italian coach builder Ghia, and the engine itself was almost absurdly flexible. It could run on diesel, on kerosene, even on tequila. Chrysler lent the cars to roughly 203 ordinary American families between 1963 and 1966, just to see what regular people thought of driving a jet engine to the grocery store. For years, Leno drove his example regularly. Then, one day, the aircraft-grade turbine simply seized, and a 60-year-old car with almost no surviving parts supply turned into an extremely expensive paperweight. Fixing it meant tracking down Williams International, the company founded by the very engineer who built the original engine, and its current head, Greg Williams, eventually pulled together a team of roughly 60 original program veterans just to bring one engine back from the dead. Idling at 22,000 revolutions per minute and revving past 44,000, running at temperatures that can climb past 1,300 degrees before real damage starts, it is not a museum piece. It is a small miracle with a steering wheel. But the turbine car is famous, at least among people who know Leno's collection well. The next one on this list is not famous at all, and it is hiding in the cheapest-looking shell imaginable. The car that looks like a rental but hides a monster. Think of a 1980s Ford Festiva. Small, forgettable, the kind of subcompact nobody photographs at a car show. Now imagine 2 men, Chuck Beck and Rick Titus, deciding to give it a heart transplant. Beck had already built a Ford GT40 Le Mans pit crew career and once wedged a Lamborghini Vi12 into a motorcycle. Titus was a racing driver who had just gotten behind the wheel of a Ford RS 200, one of the wildest rally cars ever built, and came away wondering why nobody had made an American equivalent. The two of them settled on a plan: rip the tiny factory engine out of a Festiva and drop in the 220 horsepower Yamaha-built V6 from a Ford Taurus SHO, mounted behind the front seats and sending power to the rear wheels instead of the front. The result was called the Ford Shogun, and it looks exactly like the Econobox it started life as. That is the entire point. Beck and Titus originally hoped to build as many as 250 of them through their company, Special Editions, betting there was room in the market for a boutique American exotic with supercar performance and grocery getter looks. Reality intervened fast. Each finished car cost around $42,000 in 1990, nearly $80,000 in today's money, and convincing anyone to spend that on a heavily modified Festiva proved brutally difficult. By the time production quietly ended, only 7 customer cars and a single prototype had been completed, 8 in total. Leno's is chassis number 3, and he has owned it since buying it new. It weighs barely a ton, hits 60 in about 4.6 seconds, and covers the quarter mile in under 13 seconds, numbers a stock Porsche 911 from the same era could not match, despite the Shogun costing thousands less. Leno later added a nitrous oxide system of his own, pushing an already absurd car even further past what its shape suggests it is capable of. It kept its air conditioning. It even kept leather racing seats and a Momo steering wheel. Small comforts stuffed into a car nobody was ever supposed to take seriously. Nobody expects a car this plain to move the way it does, which makes it one of the purest sleeper builds in Leno's entire garage. And if a disguised Ford feels like a strange thing to find parked near million-dollar classics, wait until you see what does not even look like a car in the first place. Some of these vehicles were never meant to look like cars at all. Designer Randy Grubb builds machines that blur the line between vehicle and sculpture, and nowhere is that more obvious than in his decapods. Grubb and Leno's relationship goes back more than a decade, starting when Leno bought Grubb's outlandish Blastoline Special, a project so distinctive Leno nicknamed it his tank car. When Grubb wanted to build something new, he did not repeat himself. He started with ordinary Piaggio scooters, a two-wheeled Fly model and a three-wheeled MP3, and reimagined them entirely by hand. These low, bullet-shaped pods were built with an unmistakable Art Deco sensibility, styled to look like something a 1930s science fiction illustrator might have dreamed up for a spaceship. Grubb has described the inspiration directly as a Flash Gordon personal mobility device, and the build process backs that up. He stripped roughly 25 pounds of factory plastic bodywork off each scooter and replaced it with hand-formed aluminum panels, riveted together the old-fashioned way, that ended up weighing barely more than what they replaced. The underlying scooter mechanics stayed fully functional. The decapods can still lean into corners like a normal scooter, still top out near 70 miles an hour, and Grubb insists his aerodynamic shaping actually reduces the crosswind buffeting that plagued old enclosed racing motorcycles. Only a small handful were ever built, planned across two variants, and Leno ended up with two of the earliest examples made. They do not fit neatly into any category. They are not muscle cars, not luxury cars, not even really street machines in the conventional sense. They are rolling design experiments, built one at a time by a single craftsman working out of Grants Pass, Oregon, and Leno keeps them around for exactly that reason. But strange shapes are one thing. What comes next is stranger for the opposite reason. It looks completely ordinary, and that is exactly why almost nobody remembers it. An entire car brand that most people have never heard of. Somewhere in the collection sits a Cunningham C3, a coupe built by a company most Americans could not identify if you put the name in front of them. Briggs Cunningham, an heir to a meatpacking fortune, spent years and a small fortune trying to do something no American had managed: win the 24 hours of Le Mans with an American car and an American driver. In 1952, race organizers changed the rules and told him that if he wanted to enter as a manufacturer, he needed to build 25 road-legal cars first. Cunningham had never intended to run an actual car company. He built one anyway, out of a factory in West Palm Beach, Florida, fitting each car with a modified racing chassis and a Chrysler Hemiv 8 capable of pushing the car from a stop to 60 miles an hour in about 7 seconds, with a top speed near 150. Building the cars entirely in America proved too expensive, so completed chassis were shipped across the Atlantic to the Italian coach builder Vignale, working from a design penned by Giovanni Michelotti, then shipped back to the United States for sale. Each car took nearly 2 months of handwork to finish, and the finished product cost somewhere between $9,000 and $11,000 at a time, when a Cadillac could be had for a third of that. Production wound down with exactly 25 examples completed, 5 open cabriolets, and 20 coupes, and the Museum of Modern Art considered the design significant enough to name it one of the 10 best contemporary automobiles of 1953. Cunningham's team never actually won at Le Mans. They finished third overall in both 1953 and 1954. A genuinely remarkable result for a tiny American operation racing against factory teams from Ferrari and Jaguar. The company never had the production run or the marketing muscle to build a lasting following, and today most car fans would walk straight past a C3 without a second glance. Leno keeps it not because it is fast or famous, but because it represents an entire chapter of automotive ambition that simply never got the audience it deserved. That theme of brilliant engineering nobody remembers is about to show up again, and this time it comes with a jet engine bolted where a normal engine should be. A second turbine, decades later, and nobody talks about it. Long after Chrysler shelved its turbine dream, an entirely different turbine project started the same way most of Leno's strangest builds start, as an idea sketched on a napkin. This time the conversation was between Leno and Bernard Jucli, the longtime chief mechanic who runs his garage day to day. Jucli brought the concept to Ed Welburn, then General Motors Vice President of Global Design, and within 2 weeks, GM's advanced design studio in North Hollywood had turned rough sketches into a real shape, borrowing visual cues from fighter jets and Formula One cars. The result, called the Ecojet, debuted at the 2006 SEMA show in Las Vegas. Built around a modified Corvette Z06 hydroformed aluminum frame and wrapped in a body of carbon fiber layered over Kevlar. Under that body sits a Honeywell LT-101, the same turbine used in Bell 222 helicopters and United States Coast Guard rescue helicopters, producing roughly 650 horsepower. It runs on biodiesel, with a second small tank of jet fuel reserved purely for starting the engine before the system switches over. Fuel economy is a joke Leno tells on himself, since the Ecojet manages something in the neighborhood of 6 miles to the gallon, meaning it is really only practical to drive after a good harvest. On paper, the car is theoretically capable of speeds approaching 245 miles an hour. In practice, it exists purely as a demonstration, a proof that a turbine could still deliver serious performance decades after Chrysler's original experiment quietly died. Put the two turbine cars side by side, and you get a 40-year conversation between two different eras of engineers, both chasing the same strange idea, both ultimately abandoned by the industry around them. Most fans who watch Leno's show remember the McLarens and the Lamborghinis. Almost none of them remember that his garage quietly holds two separate attempts at putting a jet engine in a road car built decades apart. And turbines are not the only extinct technology parked in that building. Entire brands went extinct too, and several of them are sitting only a few feet away. Brands that vanished, cars that somehow survived. Walk further into the collection and the badges start to disappear from memory even faster. There is a Wills St. Clair, built by a man named C. Harold Wills, who was not some outsider dabbling in cars. He was one of Henry Ford's earliest employees, credited with developing the nickel-chrome vanadium steel used in the Model T's chassis and even hand-lettering the script for Ford's blue oval emblem. Wills left the company a multimillionaire in 1919 and used that money to build cars under his own name in Marysville, Michigan, powered by an overhead cam V8 that cooled itself without a water pump. The company built somewhere between 12 and 14,000 cars before folding, and only around 80 are believed to survive today. Leno's example spent decades locked inside a shipping container out in the desert before it was rescued and restored. There is also an NSU Spider, the first rotary engine car ever sold to the public, built by a small German manufacturer years before Mazda made the Wankel engine famous. Only 2,375 were built between 1964 and 1967, each making a modest 54 horsepower from an engine tucked below the rear trunk. NSU eventually bet the company's entire future on a larger rotary sedan. The same seal problems that plagued the Spider caught up with them, and the brand was ultimately absorbed into what became Audi. And there is a Jensen CV8, a British Grand Tourer that paired a big lazy American Chrysler 5.8 with a fiberglass body over steel doors and adjustable shocks that sound more like science fiction than 1960s engineering. Only around 500 were built between 1962 and 1966, and the model has spent decades overshadowed by its more famous successor, the Jensen Interceptor. None of these three brands survive today in any meaningful form. Each one represents a company that tried something genuinely different and lost the business fight anyway. And the very last car on this list is proof that sometimes the biggest brands hide the rarest secrets, not the smallest ones. The Mercedes that officially should not exist. The Mercedes-Benz 600 was never a normal luxury car to begin with. Every window, the sunroof, the seats, even the trunk lid operate on a complex hydraulic system instead of ordinary electric motors, and it was built in the 1960s and 70s without any real regard for cost. That made it the most expensive car in the world at launch, priced above even a Rolls-Royce at the time, and it became the default choice for heads of state, business magnates, and more than a few authoritarian rulers, alongside famous owners like John Lennon and Elvis Presley. The engineering behind it was almost absurdly overbuilt. Mercedes gave the 600 a full steel body bolted to a steel chassis so rigid that jacking up one corner of the car would lift both tires on that side clean off the ground. It weighed more than 5,000 pounds fully equipped, yet its 6.3-liter V8 could still push it to a top speed of around 130 miles an hour. Only a small number of exotic variants ever left the factory. A landaulet with a convertible rear section for parade duty, a stretched Pullman limousine with extra rear-facing seats, and a fully armored version built in-house for the customers who needed one. Only around 138 600s were ever brought into the United States at all, which makes finding one on American soil rare enough on its own, long before anyone starts modifying it. Leno has said it is his personal favorite car in the entire collection, a preference that goes back to his teenage years working at a Mercedes dealership, where delivering one of these cars across the country felt like the height of luxury. Mercedes never offered a supercharged version from the factory. Leno's 1972 example has one anyway, built by Karl Middelhoff, a specialist restorer known specifically for his work on the 600, who fitted the stock 6.3-liter V8 with fuel injection and a supercharger that pushes output from roughly 300 horsepower up to around 525. That makes it, as far as anyone can determine, the only supercharged 600 in existence anywhere in the world. Leno has joked about once spooking an older Iranian man who assumed he was being tailed by the Shah's secret police, a reflection of just how tightly this specific car is tied to the era of strongmen who once favored it. The restoration itself is notoriously punishing. A single window switch on an original 600 can cost thousands of dollars to replace, and the hydraulic system that runs nearly every function in the car is widely considered among the hardest in the world to service correctly, which is part of why so few owners dare to actually drive theirs. Leno drives his anyway. That, more than anything else on this list, captures what makes his garage genuinely different from a typical car museum. A museum protects rarity behind glass and expects you to admire it from a distance. Leno starts the engines. He drives the turbine cars, the sleeper Fords, the vanished brands, and apparently even a Mercedes that should not technically exist. And he treats all of them the same way he treats his most famous cars, as machines built to be understood, not just displayed. The real story of this collection was never about which car is worth the most money. It is about how many genuinely remarkable machines can sit in plain sight for years before anyone notices what they actually are. If you had to guess, which one of these do you think most people have driven past on his channel without ever realizing what they were looking at? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. For more interesting stories like this, be sure to click on the next video that pops up on your screen. You never know what you'll discover next.